Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. So, this book was written by a very successful poker player. She originally went to prep school, graduated from Columbia, then went to grad school at UPenn, where she won a national fellowship from the Science Foundation. She got a degree and she was ready to be a cognitive psychologist, but she got sick before finishing her dissertation. She took a leave of absence and left. I'm not sure why you would not leave if you took a leave of absence. She got married and moved to a small town in Montana. Her brother Howard got her to start playing poker because she watched him play and wanted to try it herself. Originally, she wanted to get some money for school and kind of go back to school and play poker as a hobby, but she fell in love with it. Kind of like I did with music, until the time that I went to Atlanta and lost like $1,000 and realized that music is not nearly as profitable as I was expecting or hoping for it to be. But that's like 10 different video topics. When she retired in 2012, she had won multiple awards and over $4 million in prize money. It seems like what drove her to write this book is kind of that winning in poker involves so many little decisions that you have to make per hand. And she noticed that a lot of things in life are like that when you don't have all the answers. So she started speaking about those decisions and how to treat them like little bets. You know, at conferences, conventions, and the like. We seem to get so disappointed as humans in the results we get and the decisions we make. And it's tough for so many of us to realize that. When we look backward from results to figure out why they happened, we really risk looking at things we can't truly confirm because of all the little factors at play that we don't even realize are there. And if we do know, we don't know whether or not they're at play. And if we know they are, we don't know how much and of each one. So it's all very and it's like we dismiss these things to keep saying to ourselves that it is the way it is because of our decisions and nothing else. She brings up Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. I'd say a landmark of a work in modern psychology and how it applies to decision making in poker. You learn a lot about poker in this book, I'd say. I'm not sure why you wouldn't. I mean, it was written by a retired, professional poker player, but she dedicated a whole section of the book to the great scientific achievements of someone who eventually co-founded game theory, which is basically the theory of economic decision making. People have compared life to chess. This doesn't really make as much sense in the author's opinion as comparing it to poker because chess decisions don't really involve hidden information and much greater influences of luck. Poker is about making decisions on valuable information that you learn over time. So around this part of the book, she really talks a lot about when the results have to do with the skills that you have in them versus the luck and the things that you can't control. She also talks about how admitting you don't really know is extremely beneficial in so many areas of life in the world. Wrapping your arms around uncertainty is a huge step in the right direction when it comes to relationships, science, business. It reminds me of something Jeff Bezos said in a fireside chat.
I have a phrase that I like to use, which is helpful, which is, I want you to gamble with me on this. Because the truth is, when you're in a position like that where nobody knows what the right answer is, you're not saying, I'm right on this, go do this. You're saying, I want you to gamble with me on this because I don't know if it's right either. I disagree and commit all the time. And I promise the people when I do it, very clear, I don't agree with this. I think it's probably not going to work. But I will never say I told you so, and I'm going to be on your team. I will do everything I can to make it work.
She concludes that one section, though, by saying that our goal should be to look at the world objectively. Then she talks about what it means to redefine what you see as wrong. The second best choice is not wrong. By definition, it is more right or less wrong than the third best or the fourth best. If we just think there's right or wrong in life, we're gonna get stuck in this continuum of emotion and pride over which is which and closing ourselves to what we realize is still there in the end to change things even more that we can't control. This is a huge reason why I just don't resonate with the pushing of modern political agendas. It seems like so much of this book is about looking at the world more objectively than a lot of us currently tend to do, and what that really entails when you make your decisions throughout your life on it. She stresses the difference between a decision and a bet. The actual, real original definition of bet is a choice, at least noun, is by making a choice by thinking about what will probably happen to risk losing something when you try to do or achieve something, and to make decisions that are based on the belief that something will happen or is true. But all our decisions are bets. There is always opportunity cost in choosing one thing over others. It reminds me of the Rush line, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. A lot of this is also because bets, she says, are bets against ourselves that we are not choosing. She talks a lot about beliefs in the second chapter of 5. Once you believe, I found this interesting, once you believe something, protecting the belief itself guides how we treat information that's relevant to it. Then she talks about what we do to each other and even ourselves when we ask, wanna bet? The beginning of a section raises a slew of questions that come up as we take inventories of ourselves regarding the accuracy of what we say, to which people ask that. These are great questions, in my opinion, to ask ourselves, relatively constantly, as we kind of balance out our certainty versus the realities against them day to day. Like, how did I know this? Where did I get this information? Who did I get it from? What is the quality of my sources? How much do I trust them? How up to date is my information? How much of the information do I have that's relevant to the belief? What other things like this have I been confident of that turned out not to be true? What are other plausible alternatives? What do I know about the person challenging my belief? What is their view of how credible my opinion is? What do they know that I don't know? What is their level of expertise? What am I missing? From the buddy system chapter and how to kind of protect yourself from ultimately hurting yourself narrative, this stood out. Diversity and dissent are not only checks of fallibility, but the only means of testing the ultimate truth of an opinion. The only way a human being can touch the whole of a subject is by hearing what can be said about it from persons of every variety of opinion. I loved this so much. It's really kind of what I try to do with all these books. There are two things I want to bring to your attention before saying what I'm about to say. Filter bubbles and echo chambers. I know it sounds kind of like weird names of obstacles and utilities or something in video games, but believe me, if you want to think of life as a video game, it makes plenty of sense. One of them keeps us in the other. Filter bubbles are situations where internet users encounter only information and opinions that conform to and reinform their own beliefs. They're caused by algorithms that personalize an individual's online experience. Echo chambers are like these little environments where people only encounter beliefs that coincide with their own, so that their existing views are reinforced and alternative ideas are not considered. If you want an example of echo chambers, literally politics. Political parties, in my opinion, are really just political echo chambers in action. Filter bubbles, they tend to put us in echo chambers, even though the internet gives us immediate access to such a diverse array of opinions and their justifications. Something else, which I think is as good or bad as you make it, is that we all have this sociological tendency to kind of gravitate toward like-minded people. She stresses how it's pretty much inevitable that we do this. If you don't believe this, look at the top results of your Instagram or Twitter feed. If that doesn't piece enough of the puzzle together, look at the comments of either. This book is filled with different ways presented of communicating self-awareness, or at least saying, look, I don't know, but maybe I do. This is something I'm 30% sure I could say about any other audiobook I've listened to.
Do you see what I did there?
If you didn't, well, using a percentage to quantify your confidence in a statement is one of them. Another one of these little techniques or exercises, if you will, of how to separate the quality of your decisions from the quality of your results is a lot of this has to do with looking more long term, looking at your future self, what she calls truth seeking. When you make a decision, for example, a good few things to ask yourself are, what will this do for me in 10 minutes? What will it do in 10 months? What will it do for 10 years? Or even a decision swear jar. You know how in a swear jar, when someone swears, you have to put $1 in the jar? This is like that, except instead of swearing, they do it when they say things like, I know, I'm sure, I'm 100% certain, this always happens, or anything very, like extremely just definite. Something of the like. There's a slew of other examples in the book, and then she talks about something called backcasting. There are a bunch of other things she talks about that are kind of like these toward, the last third or so of the book. Backcasting, for example, is where you look at where you are now from where you want to be, except rather in a methodical way. Backcasting is where you see a newspaper with a headline saying something about you achieving your goal, and then saying to smash the like button on this video if you haven't already, because it helps with the YouTube algorithm and ranking results and all sorts of stuff, and I'd really appreciate that because I put like so much time into these videos. But then she talks about pre-mortems. It's kind of like the opposite. It's where you imagine like what goes wrong. Not the opposite of hitting the like button, but definitely the opposite of backcasting. Because pre-mortems it's where you imagine what could go wrong and how you could possibly fail. So much of this book also talks about how to evaluate the potential outcomes of different decisions made and actions taken over a long period of time. It reminds me of something Charles Duhigg calls mental models in his book Smarter, Faster, Better. Let's say a company wants to develop a strategic plan to double their market share from 5 to 10%. Everybody involved in the planning imagines a newspaper saying Company X has doubled its market share in the last 3 years. And then the team leader asks them to identify what got them there, what events occurred, what decisions were made, what went their way to get the enterprise to capture the marketplace. This lets that company identify better the strategies and tactics needed to double the market share, as well as anything that needs to be tweaked. Quotes, "I don't want to be the man who learns, I want to be the man who knows. Being wrong hurts us more than being right feels good. Nature does not start from scratch. Rather, she is an inveterate," I've never heard that word before this, "rather she is an inveterate jury-rigger who rarely invents a mechanism to do splendidly when an old mechanism can be modified to do tolerably well. The internet is a playground for motivated reasoning. You can observe a lot by watching. We must believe in luck, for how else can we explain the success of those we don't like? Our feelings are not a reaction to the average of how things are going." Direction 1. I recommend this book if you think that the world is more black and white, and on most days at least you are very sure of yourself and you have noticed that it kind of negatively impacts your social life and your relationships and just a lot of little areas of your life, and you kind of look at the little cracks in the armor and you're like, what can I do about this? So you really kind of want to take a look at the other side of that coin. I definitely recommend this book for someone like that. I also recommend this book if you just don't know what to do a lot of the time when it comes to decision making and it tends to worry you. Direction 2. If you like this book, I recommend checking out Blink by Malcolm Gladwell about the power of thinking without thinking, which is an amazing book in psychology because a lot of things that really seriously go unnoticed by a vast majority of people. I feel like a lot of those things, Annie Duke talks about them in Thinking in Bets, and I feel like many of those have a lot in common with some of the stuff that Malcolm Gladwell gets really deep into with Blink. I also recommend Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza, which is, the title was enough for me of a reason to get the book. And I found it to be more than worth it. Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. There's a link to it in the description if you guys want to check it out and read the reviews. That and all the other books I mentioned in this video, if you're interested in those as well. If there are any other books you guys want me to check out and review, please let me know in the comments below. If you checked out this book, what did you think? Did you like it? I want to spark some dialogue down there and get to know my audience. But hey, make sure to smash that like button if you like this video. Subscribe if you have actually watched this far into the video. I don't know why anybody wouldn't subscribe, especially if this is not the first video of mine that you've done that with. And if you could turn on that little bell to receive a notification every time I drop a new video, because lately I've been dropping like 5 a week. That would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can find me everywhere, and I will see you then.